Hi, Nessa. I have looked over your lesson plan and have some feedback for you. This was great. This lesson plan was really well done. I liked it. I even got a little bit wrapped up and read the short story by Nadine Gordimer, and found that that story is actually there's like a student version of it on YouTube that's really well done. And I got all sidetracked with that. That was fascinating. So I'm going to go over the rubric, the same one I handed to you in class, and talk to you about your lesson plan in each section. So starting with the elements and presentation, this is very well done. It's complete. It's obviously well thought through. In your prior content knowledge, you clearly have used the standards to look at that. Sometimes it's a good idea to just temper a little bit, what students know, what students should know, what they actually know, what they're able to know versus what they're able to apply, things like that. You did a fine job in this lesson plan, but it's just a good idea to temper some of that sometimes with like maybe students can kind of remember, but they need a review or they need a reminder on how to apply their information. Okay, something good to note, but for this lesson plan, your elements and presentation is well done. In the desired results section, I was glad to see that you had narrowed down the evidence outcomes to one specific evidence outcome that you're working on for this lesson plan. And I was really glad to see, too, the very close alignment with that, with this evidence outcome later on in your learning plan. Your essential questions global are well done. I think that those are very real questions that people talk about outside of academia. It's always kind of my litmus test for those. And your essential questions from the content area are well done too. They align with your evidence outcomes, and I think they have a grounding inside of language arts. Your students will be able to, and your students understand are well done. You took a piece from the evidence outcome. You had the word by, and then you put an observable outcome after that. So the desired results section is looking great. The assessment section, I'm not necessarily grading these yet as much as I am checking for alignment and completion, and you meet both of those criteria, so we're good there. On to the learning plan. I love this kind of an idea. I thought that is so creative and so clever, and interesting, as the kids are listening to you to tell this story, at some point someone's going to notice it's unreal. And so it's really well done because it's kind of entertaining. It kind of shows a side of you that you want to be a little a little humorous in the classroom, willing to poke some fun at yourself. And then it transitions so well into your evidence outcome and what you want them looking at today. Okay, or for this lesson plan. All right. In this next section, you do some guided practice. So you grab a piece of information, you read a text, and you decide that that piece of information applies directly to the text. And it seems to me like you did a good, what we would call a think aloud. So you didn't. Okay, so you typed the author's name into, an internet search box, and then you demonstrated or you thought out loud for the students why you chose the site that you chose. And then here again, you do a very nice think aloud because you read the text and you're like, there, I see it. But then you push a piece like one step past that into not just this guy loves nature, and it's really obvious, look at the way he writes, but you push forward into that so what area. Why does it matter that he loved nature? How does that affect the text? So I really, really like that you took that additional step and didn't just stop short at he likes nature, therefore he can write about it well. Here you have a check for understanding. Does everyone understood what I did up here? I might push you right there at the end of that question to just do a little bit more specific of a check for understanding. Because you just demonstrated a few skills, and these are a little bit higher level skills, I think it's not a bad idea to say, okay, what are the 4 things I did? First, I searched for the author. Second, I intentionally chose a credible source to look at. Third, I looked for evidence of that in the text. And fourth, I pushed past the evidence and asked, so what? So those are the 4 steps that I want you guys to be taking as you're working together. We don't always have to do things like that, break things down into steps. But when you've got a skill, a real abstract skill like this, and one that you're pushing from like, finding evidence, applying it to text, and then analyzing application, you've pushed through 3 levels of Bloom's, in a pretty quick time period. And I think that's kind of a good criteria for needing to establish the multiple steps that you did. Okay. Other than that, this is really well done. Thanks.